Welcome back to the Manufacturing Come Up. I'm Malachi Greb, your host, and here we have Doug Grogg. Got it right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And he's with Yaskawa Moto Man as robotics sales manager, correct?
Yep,
For the region?
regional sales manager for Kentucky and Southern Indiana.
That's awesome. Definitely is able to do more sales than I can do. I'm glad to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I think that you're definitely going to add a ton of value. You've had a great career run so far, and we'd love to learn how you got to where you're at and becoming a sales manager of Yaskawa.
Yeah, so kind of been a different road. I started off in actually with manufacture of leak detection equipment, then moved on to a fluid power distributor, then on to another manufacturer in Festo, and then came back to another fluid power distributor to be a product manager instead of just outside sales. And then fortunately, my current manager, we knew of each other at Festo, and I realized he was the hiring manager, and he gave me a shot at getting into the robot world. So that's
Nice.
how I got here. So
nice. Did you ever anticipate that you'd be in the robotics world?
I always wanted. I mean,
Did you?
because growing up just tinkering and stuff as a kid, and then going through engineering, mechanical engineering school, and then being in the automation world, factory automation and robots. It's at the highest level. So
Yeah, absolutely.
figuring out all the different types of automation pieces, and then realizing how popular the robots are these days, then it was just exciting to be like, hey, now I finally have a chance, and it's been fun. It's just a blast. So
I definitely love this industry. I mean, I couldn't see myself doing anything besides robotics, especially robotics, right? But like any type of servo systems, motion, give me motors in motion.
Yeah.
I love all those things.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because I was explaining to my wife last night, because in the bio, I had the little tagline about how it's made, and I was like, that is so important because in college and even after, like that's what drove me to just love going into these plants and facilities, is understanding how nuanced products are being made, and then actually seeing that process and then helping them figure out, okay, how can we make them faster, better, and stronger? So being able to be a part of that is just it's a kick.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's like not a ton of industries where you can work and like go into work and every day it's a different job, different task, different process.
Yeah.
That's probably one of my favorite things about it is like I knew from like the very beginning that I didn't want to like go to the same facility every single day in and out, because like I also knew that from the beginning I actually planned I'd work with one company, I'd be there for 20-30 years.
Yeah.
And so I knew if I was going to work at one company for 20-30 years, I wanted my settings around me to change a little bit to be able to not get bored and burnt out.
Oh yeah. Well, and in college is when I figured that out too, because it was junior year and I had already done some co-oping, and that's when I was starting to realize I did not want to sit behind a desk and do AutoCAD all day. And a guy came in and said, hey, if you like being out and about, try getting into sales. And as soon as I heard that, I knew what I was doing. And so it was one track was getting into technical sales. So
that was awesome to be able to learn that at that period of time, because I've heard like countless stories of like mechanical engineers getting their mechanical engineering degree and then going into the workforce, and they're like, I didn't know there was going to be this much computer work.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because on one of your questions you had sent me, it was did you ever regret any decisions, or you weren't unsure of any decisions? And I remember getting into the field of making that decision to go into sales. I did have that little like, what am I doing? Because so many people took the standard engineering route, which is the path that you're designing. And it would have been all right. I mean, the pay would have been a lot more than what I was jumping into. And I was like, what am I doing here? I'm going down this weird path.
Yeah.
But then once I got into it and realized like, oh, I get to see all these different processes and every day is different, then that's when I knew I was like, this is the world I want to live in. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think the sales side of it, it's like there's definitely like the uncertainty part of it, like because you never know, especially like if you're heavily commission based salary, then there's a lot of uncertainty there. but it also offers like one of the highest opportunities. If I'm not mistaken, it's the highest paid engineering role in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be that way, and yeah, it's definitely that risk reward and that balance, right? And so, I mean, if you can, I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where, you know, it's a comfortable life, and you've got to get out there and you've got to find the opportunities. But in this exciting market and with a great company like Yaskawa, it makes it that much more comfortable that I know that I can go out there with confidence and know that I'm going to be able to bring home enough for my family, because we've got the products, we've got the support, we've got the industry, we've got everything that it takes to be successful. I just have to get out there and do it. So it makes it a lot easier having the right company.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's one of the big things that like has helped me through like learning about sales, is like having a product, like just having confidence in the product that you're selling. And just like, I was never in a sales position until I started the company.
Oh, okay.
And then I started the company, I was a controls engineer and project manager, and right, so very engineering heavy. And then so like then going into sales, like it's a very uncomfortable thing for me. And one of the huge clicks was like I was saying, like to you off camera, like I'm not the best at the words, right? Like conveying what like how I feel about the things, right? But it clicked to me one day. I was like, inside of me, I like have this vision of what we are, who we are, and like the direction we're going. And like so that like became like, oh, that's what I need to talk about with people. That's what I need to tell people, you know? And I mean, it's kind of crazy that click is like the thing that makes the connection to make the whole process 100% easier.
Yes. Well, and another thing that you had mentioned as well is that that need and the necessity to do things right and to do things at that next level of performance, right? To be elite, right? And how important that is, and then you don't necessarily need the words or the sales techniques, right? And that's, fortunately, I've been incredibly lucky to have fantastic mentors along the way, and so I credit them a lot, because just Charlie Hunter, he's one of the ones that really sticks out, because for 8 years I got to work with him, and he was fantastic. And his whole thing was, it was do what's right for the customer, solve their problems, work with them, be a great trusted partner, and everything else will fall in line. And so then you don't need to be salesy. You don't need to, it's just, you just do what's right. You take care of the problems, and you're going to get, those customers are going to be loyal to you. And as long as you take that same mentality going into every customer, then people like you that weren't necessarily comfortable getting that sales role, but have the work ethic and that desire to do what's right and to get the solutions, then it just starts coming like it is for you. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that those who are engineers first and then flip over to sales, I think they have like a very good foundation, right? The transition's hard. And like, that first year or two is definitely going to be like some struggles, and especially like internally. But then like after they start getting more comfortable talking with people and everything like that, then the skills that they had learned with whether they're doing mechanical engineering or programming, now they can start kind of relating those skills and converting them into the words that like the customer, that builds confidence with the customer. Right. Because that was also like a big thing that I think a lot of engineers struggle with, and I struggled with, was like, I know all these controls things, but the customer doesn't care that much about the controls things, right? They care about how it's going to maximize their uptime and prevent downtime, and so like,
I don't need to be talking about that. I just need to be talking about what they need to hear, right?
Yeah. And so you're sitting there, as an engineer, you might say like, oh yeah, the way we name our tags in our PLC is, and they're like, yeah. And it's like, but if you like convert those words of like, yeah, the way we name the things within our PLC logic, it makes it easier for a programmer to read the code and get things back up and running quicker. And they're like, okay.
Oh yeah, that's how it's going to help me. Yes, right.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take this time to segue back into your past.
Okay.
Take me back as young as you want to take me, but I'd like to know, like, especially like before college, what made you take the decision to get into engineering?
Yeah, good call. So I'd say a lot of it was my dad. So
Okay.
my dad, he was the second oldest of 12 kids on a farm, right? So
Okay.
he was the fix it man. So he just and it, back then it's not like he could look things up. It was just you
Yeah.
just dove in and you did it, right? You just
Yeah.
fixed it.
Yeah.
And so he was always a teacher and home remodeling. So we were always working on houses, or me and my older brother just playing with things in the garage. And I was telling you
Mhm.
before how we were taking things apart, not necessarily always putting them back together, but
Yeah.
always doing that, right?
Yep.
Always working with our hands. And so that has always been part of who I am, even to this day, home remodeling and doing repairs and stuff. But then as I got older, and then when my brother went to college and he went for mechanical engineering, and I learned, you know, I didn't need to know exactly what I wanted to do, but
Yep.
I understood that going into engineering opened that, it just blew open the doors as
Right.
far as what those opportunities would be.
Mhm.
And that's when I was like, that's what I want to do. I'm very indecisive. So I was like, I don't know exactly what I want to
Yeah.
do, but if I take this path, I have so many more opportunities
Mhm.
that are available.
Yeah.
And that's what drove me to it. So
Yeah. I think that's extremely important. One of the big things that I push for individuals is like do something, get a minimum like a 2-year degree. Like if you go with like 2-year like robotics degree, it's simple 2 years, right? It's 2 years of your life. Like especially younger people, they always think that like 2 years is such a long time, or
yeah.
4 years is such a long time. But it's like I just like blink and I'm like, oh, what was it? I got an email. It was Rockwell saying your subscription is ready for upgrade, and I'm like, what do you mean it's ready for upgrade? Because the year rolled
Yeah.
around, right?
It's so
The
quick.
year
Yeah.
rolled around, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, and just like I mean, it's just so crazy
Yeah.
how fast that time passes, and if people just get like especially speaking to like individuals who just like don't have a direction and they don't choose a direction, right? Like that's a big issue. And if they just get that 2-year degree, I mean, now they're looking at a minimum of, especially if you go like in the robotics manufacturing space, you're looking at a minimum of like $25 an hour. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's at
Oh, yeah.
today. That's today.
At a
It'll
minimum, you're
Yeah,
talking. Yeah.
and it's going to be what 10 years from now, $35 an hour probably.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Easy.
yeah. Well, and it's what's really exciting for anyone getting into this space is how quickly you can make those leaps, and how much those companies want to help you get there, right? Because
Mhm.
they need you to be skilled, right? So as
Yep.
soon as you get tied into a company that is automating and wants to expand on their automation,
Mhm.
then you just have to have the will and the desire to be like, yeah, I want
I want to
something
do that.
better. And they'll
Pour
present the
into you.
resources
Yeah.
and opportunities, right?
Yeah.
One of your questions, I loved your questions, by the way,
Thank you.
that before sent it to me, and I love just thinking through it. And one of them, you had kind of had the combination of, what kind of university is the best to get into this market, and another one was, you know what advice would you have to someone getting right out of high school, right into
Yep.
this space? And a couple things that kind of came to my mind were one, finding that mentor, right? Finding someone
Mhm.
in that space
Yep.
that can help you along the way. And then the other thing was the just getting into it somehow. So if you can afford college, great. If you can't, finding that company that is an automation that
Yep.
wants to bring on people to put resources and to build you up, because there's plenty of companies out there that say, hey, come on board and we'll help you get there.
Yeah.
And the sooner you get to there, then you can get that 2-year degree, and they'll pay for it. A lot of these companies are paying
Mhm.
for it.
Yeah.
But it's just important to find someone that can kind of help mentor you along and kind
Yeah.
of show you the path and be excited for you, to get you into it. But there's so much opportunity out there. That's why
Yeah.
I love
There's
this.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish that like that was one thing that I've had a major downfall on. Like probably majority of my career is mentorship. I definitely wish I'd have took on more mentorship. I think part of it's just like a slightly introverted individual.
Uh-huh.
Another part is like I don't really like asking for things. I'm always like I never want anybody to give me anything for free, and so
Hmm.
like I always want to be like, how can I give something to you? Or I don't want to ask you for anything unless I give you something first, right?
Yeah.
And so like I think that's caused like an issue with like me seeking mentorship, but I highly advise like anybody that is struggling with that internally, that they go for the mentorship, they ask it, because I think that it's actually one thing that you're giving as an honor to the individual. Like, I'll
Yes.
say, hey, will you be my mentor?
Yes.
You're gonna be like, oh wow, like this guy, he thinks of me that highly, that he wants me to mentor what he's doing. And so that thought process, and that might cause that mental shift to say, that makes sense. Maybe I will ask some people, because especially when it comes to life, right? You have time that is very sensitive, right? So like, if somebody starts pouring into you, your second year into your career might completely alter the way your career goes, versus if you start being mentored at 10 years into your career, and you could have essentially been 7 years into your career and been at the place that you're going to probably be at 20 years into your career,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and just completely streamline that process by having the mentorship, and also too, just life things, right? And so you have your industry
Yes.
things, but there's other things like that, just you can only learn from people who've experienced it, and lived through those processes.
Yes. Well, and you make an excellent point about how it is hard for people to ask for that mentorship, because when I think about like the mentors in my life, I can't say that I actually asked them for mentoring. It was more um, of identifying them as someone that is a
Mm,
mentor to you. So
gotcha.
for instance, like whether it's Charlie Hunter, or like when I was at Air Hydropower, like Tom McGuire and Caleb Schumann, like they were instrumental for me. And it wasn't necessarily that I asked them, but they made themselves available.
Hmm.
And so these people, and Bill Jansen's my current manager, it was just that they made themselves available and made it very clear that they want to help.
Mm,
And so by identifying those people in your life that are willing to help, and that are doing it like in a way that you want to do it yourself,
yeah.
identifying that and saying, that's a person that I want to learn more from. And I think that's where you can, even before you put yourself out there and say, be my mentor, you can identify that and say, that's a person I want to learn more from.
Yeah.
Ask them more questions, get more involved with them, ask them about how they got there and how you could get there. Because like you said, it's an honor for most people. Like most people want to, they want
Get
to
a bit
know that,
known.
hey, someone thinks I'm a mentor. Like that's exciting for
Yeah.
people. And so identifying those people is really, really key, I think.
Yeah, I think whenever you was actually saying something about it before, that was one of the things that actually clicked in my mind. I was like, oh, like there were some people that, like, maybe I didn't really at least label them as a mentor, but like, one of them was Brad Holland. He was one of the first people I had discussed. At that point in time, I was like a mold setter and a process technician. And I was like, hey, like, what did you do for a degree? Like, what did you know? And so we started talking about his degree path, and that his mentorship is what got me to go to college, essentially, or at least defined a little bit of like what I was going to do. And then while I was in college, one of my instructors, which is the program chair now, Donna Zimmerman, she was the one that actually linked me up with the systems integrator. Right. And so but it was through like the mentorship process of like asking the questions, like, hey, like, what's the best paying in this field? What's the, just asking like industry related questions that kind of said, and it opened up the door to said, one of the big things was I want to travel for work. At this point in time, I was like, I want something to travel. So I also knew it paid well, and I also
Mhm.
wanted like I wanted to be in different locations
Yeah.
and different
Yeah.
experiences all the time. And she's like, you know what? She's like, I actually got somebody that I might be able to set you up with. And it was somebody that she had went to college with, and they started their own systems integration company. And so that's where I went and spent pretty much my entire career there.
Yeah, it's the people, right? It's the
Yeah.
people around you that can help you network and help you just build yourself up, give you that encouragement and that excitement for what you're doing. Um, it's just so many times I think about the people that I asked, and they shed light on how they're doing things and how they're successful. And another person I think about, like Scott Castlebear, like just really showed me how much, like, he just so passionate about his team, like
Mm,
to a whole different degree, or a
yeah.
whole different level. So just I think by acknowledging and identifying those people in your life that you're like, they're doing something really well, and I
Mm,
want to figure out how to do that, then that's what brings you in. It has brought me that inspiration and motivation. Like, that's where I want to go.
yeah.
So it's like when you're getting out of high school, if you're in college, wherever that is, finding those people, identifying those people, and connecting with them as much as possible, and that's what's going to help people get further in life, I think.
Absolutely. What were some of the particular things in your life that you feel like were some key transition changes to maybe navigate your entire career?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think you know, I'd say unfortunately for my companies at the time, it was the job changes, and going from my initial, I was with Scott Industrial for 8 years, and then making that jump from being at a distributor going into manufacturing sales with Festo, right? That was a complete shift in how you do sales, but it was really, really helpful in understanding that other side of the business, right? Like distribution sales is completely different from manufacturing sales. But and then so each time I took a new role or with a new company, it was monumental in how the value it added to how I go about business, and my overall appreciation for how distributors play a role in this game, how manufacturers play a role, and how much teamwork is required and needed. Festo was fantastic for showing me, like, wow, that for such a large company, it felt like a small one because of how great they did teamwork. And then recognizing that was going to be important as any job I took or any role I got, how important that teamwork was going to be part of it. But I think those, whether it's internally with your company or if you've got to make that shift, but I think taking on a new challenge, I think that's what it is. By taking on that new challenge, then it switches gears for you, and it makes you think in a different way, and it gives you appreciation for a whole different life. Just like you said, when you made the transition into this role, right?
Yeah.
Like, it completely different for you, right? Like,
Yeah.
you were used to doing the controls, and now you're doing the sales and marketing and so much networking.
Yeah.
Completely different for you. But can you imagine if you hadn't made that jump, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's those switch, when I change things up in it, that's what's been exciting. But
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, there's not been a stage in my career. I think a lot of people will probably experience this, but I feel like there's not been many stages where I feel like I wasn't learning. I think every part of the process, I feel like I've been learning. And I will say there has been like a slight increase, well, probably a significant increase in like the learnings of like just different things, right? Like, even before, like, I had a YouTube channel, and it was a fitness YouTube channel, and then with starting the company, and like, so that marketing, how it transitioned from into business, but then like the new skill sets that were added as far as like the depth of marketing, right? Like with our initiative to target seat frame welding or just welding in general, right? Like before we didn't have a direction of like how we were going to market ourselves as a company. Are we a material handling company, a welding company? And but those are knowledges, right? The thing is like learning, like, oh wow, like the depth of the marketing is super important, right? Like, what do you, even if you have like something that's broad, right? So like for you, it's Yaskawa. So like you have a robot. It's and there's other product lines within that, but like because of you're selling the robot, that is you guys' product. It's the it's packaged already in a sense, right? You guys already have I mean, it's been developed years and years ago, 20, 30 years ago. Like, this is what our product is. This is what our business model looks like, right? And those things that have to be learned, like if you're trying to do like marketing and stuff like that. And it's just been mind blowing, like the things that I've learned and like sales and like just how uh, just like learning, like, hey, we need to target this thing, like being more direct in our targeting. Because before, I mean, like naively 2 years ago, I'd have been like, it's not that important. But now I'm like, it's extremely important.
Extremely important. Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's important for the customers to understand that it's not just a product, but it's a solution, right? Like, that's what our customers need. They need solutions, and so in that marketing, I think that's what gives us. It forces us to be more in depth in marketing, because it's not just like, hey, here's a robot. Hey, cool. Go for it. Like, we have to be intentional about saying, hey, yeah, we manufacture robots, right? but we do so much more. And I mean, from our support, but through our technical partners, through partners with, you know, great integrators like you, like that's what really adds the value to why Yaskawa is such a great robotic company. It's not just the product, and that is why marketing is so important, because those customers, they need to understand the full picture to really be confident and comfortable
Yep.
in taking on these challenges. Because that's, you know, another great question you had for me, and that it was, you know, what is a challenge in the industry today? And for me, the biggest challenge is getting customers kind of, I don't want to say bought into, but to get ready to go to jump into the automation, right? Robotic
Yep.
like to have that confidence, because
Yeah.
that's a big leap for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we've talked offline about how that confidence grows with that customer when they know that we've got experience in that field, right? When they can go on LinkedIn or whatever and see like, hey, Elite's been doing this, or yeah, Yaskawa does have a lot of welding experience, and that confidence to take on those challenges, it's very important. It's critical.
Yeah.
It's necessary.
So. Absolutely. Yeah, and like one, that's another big thing that like I've experienced as well is and everybody that's doing sales in this industry or just has exposure with the customers, that the people that have zero automation going to automation is a huge shift, right?
Huge.
And also too, like I think it's probably not even talked about enough. The success of that first integration, that first solution is paramount.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. When I had a customer recently, and excuse me, they asked me, they're like, hey, what are the keys to success in automation, you know, robotic automation? And it was finding the right partner, and it was finding a more simple solution to take on, right? Like some customers are like, well, if we can take on this gigantic task, then we can do everything else. And I'm like, well, that's cool. We'll get there. But what's most important is the success and the as fast as you can implement something and as easy as you can implement something. When you see that robotic application take place and take form, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm getting product consistently, great quality. I don't have to worry about time-wise or any. I can tell my customers I'm going to get this product in a timely manner. The weight just is lifted, and then it's like, okay, now we'll take on that next project.
Yeah.
But the success of the first project is so critical.
Yep, super important. Like you said, like we go into a customer's facility, one of the first things we're looking at is success rate, right? And then when you peel that back a little bit, like what ensures success rate? Just don't do complex. Right?
That's right.
Keep things.
We'll get there, right? We'll get there.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, we all experience this where, you know, you walk back to an area and they have all these things going on. There's 50 part numbers and, you know, 20 people, and it's a $3 million investment, and they've never automated anything. And it's like, okay, cool. But there was that other thing right there we just walked past is one part number. it's only 2 employees, but you know, we can get this out in well under 6 months, and you're good. The success rate is 101%. Like this has a very, very low chance of failure. Like basically something weird has to happen with the moon or something.
Yeah. Right.
This is definitely a transition, but one thing I've experienced as a struggle for me in sales is say for example, I'm talking to a customer about palletizing, and they're like, I want to know how you're going to help me. And I'm like, it's like, to me, it's so hard because like it's palletizing. Like, what do you want me to, you know what I mean? It's like we're picking a box up from a conveyor and we're putting it down. Like, this is a side tangent, but it's something to like think about, like as far as like in a sales position and like how to navigate around that. I guess let me ask you that. Maybe that'll help somebody. Help me at least. So like something that's like a super simple application, right? How do you portray that value of how you're going to help the customer?
And that's a great question. So, for me, there's at least a couple level. I might add more to this, right?
Keep adding,
the one thing is I look at what it's doing for their employees, right? And so in a case like palletizing, right, this is the end of the road from their facility, right? So you've got the heaviest component, and especially so ergonomically, it is usually a nightmare, right? You've got a box that they're leaning over, their pallet. I mean, it's a lot of up and down movement. No one wants to be doing that,
Right.
right? I don't know of anyone that I've ever talked to that says, I want to palletize boxes all day. Not happening, right?
Yeah.
And so what we also know is, so it's a pain point for their employees, right?
Yep.
We also know that retaining employees is harder than ever,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So the more that we can take an employee and take them from this very annoying task, mundane task, and put them in a higher value task where they're feeling like, oh, I'm not hurting my back. I'm doing something a robot couldn't do. And so I'm bringing more value to the company, and I'm no longer hating what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden that escalates that mentality for that employee, right?
Yep.
Which is, you cannot compare that on paper, right? So
Right.
that's one aspect of how we help in automation, is by giving that employee more value, right? The other thing is just the consistency, and a lot of customers understand it more so, and more are learning about the consistency of knowing that when packages are coming down, you can say, I'm going to get this many boxes on that pallet, and it's just going to always be that case. As long as I've got products coming down, the consistency of it. And that is another thing that's really lacking in in these facilities, is they're like, I can't get consistent with putting my product and getting it out.
Yep.
So I'd say those two are the biggest things that I'd say for the simple applications. It's the consistency and how it helps their employees become more valuable to them, to keep them.
Yeah, absolutely. What about project success? So you're trying to convince the customer that this project will be successful.
Yeah, and that starts off with the partnership and instilling the confidence in Yaskawa as a company, right? So if I'm the face of why they brought me in there, right? With, hey, we want to use your robot, or we're thinking about using them. I want to first figure out who we're partnering with from an integrator standpoint, if we are, so that they understand who the team is, right?
Gotcha.
We got to have a team for this to be successful. And the next thing is for them to understand all the value that Yaskawa is bringing. And so as quickly as possible, I get them up to Yaskawa for them to understand that we're not just handing them a robot, that when they buy into Yaskawa, it's the whole team. Like, they see that, hey, they're going to get any training that they want at our facility. We've got all the spare parts to support them. So we've got the robots, we've got the experience. So we have the whole team to support them. It's not just here's your product, see you later, good luck. It is hey, we're in it with you. And once they understand that, and once they see that, then that confidence level goes up for them. And that's how we say, hey, this should give you the confidence that we're going to make this successful. And then it's referrals, and like we talked about offline, it's about just following through, doing it, getting it done. Execution, absolutely.
Yeah.
Being elite, right?
I think, right.
That's right.
That really, I think, defined it very well. And to say it in another way, it's taking a product and saying, you're not only receiving a product, you're not just getting a robot, you're not just getting a palletizing system, that you're getting all these other valuable assets. You're getting the support, whether it be through engineering, whether it be through simulation, whether it be through 24/7 support like you guys offer. Those things would differentiate the fact that you're just giving them something. Because one of the key things that came to my mind was that, like, if they're just buying a product, they now feel like, hey, I bought this thing, now it's here, but what outside value is there? I'm thinking like the customer right now, like, what, okay, cool, I got this product, and then thinking about, like, okay, if my system goes down, what's going to happen then? If we need some preventative maintenance maybe into the future, like what type of support do we have in that area? So I think that you definitely called it out perfectly, like just defining the difference, that it's not just a product, it's all these other things around the product.
It's so important. And fortunately enough, customers, when I visit them, they understand that. And especially once they visit and then really get a feel for, like, oh wow, I'm not just getting a robot here. And that's what hopefully we're gonna show more and more people is the need for that when you are taking that jump, especially for those new customers, right? The new ones that are just getting into robotics, how important that is. Because if you don't have the experience in robotics and you're trying to get into that world, dropping a robot off, or in the customer's case, picking a robot up or getting it and being like, all right, now let's implement it. That is a long and hard road.
Yeah.
Where if you've got a whole team behind you, then you're going to have success, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to be exciting instead of this scary thing. It can be exciting to take on automation. So
yeah, it could definitely be super scary for the customers that just have zero experience. Because like the people who are in the industry, like we see robotics, and one, the comfort level's there, but we almost go to a mindset of thinking like everybody knows what robots are. Even if you're like a programmer, right? You just think everybody knows what a PLC is, right? And then, but there's customers that are like, "What's a robot?" I mean, still today, and what year are we in? 2023 now. People are like, "What's a robot?" You know, I mean, to some degree, right? They understand.
How can it help me? Or like, oh, we don't need them, or some level of like uncertainty, or
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, so one thing you mentioned earlier, you talked about the shift in sales positions. So I'd like to ask you that and maybe help navigate somebody's career as far as like what type of sales maybe they want to go into. And you compare distribution versus manufacturing sales.
Yeah. So it's distribution. There's so much more to that, because right, like you got lots of components. So if and that's why I'm so grateful to have gone through that, because it gave me the knowledge of getting into not only the component sale of like hydraulic valves, pneumatic valves, and things, but then also like helping design power units, and helping design pneumatic systems and laying them out. And so that's one side of the distribution side that I loved, is that I really did get into like, oh, okay, a customer would be like, I need to make this work, and then figuring out, okay, what valves, actuators, and controls are we going to have to piece together to make that work. And that was really fun, a part of the distribution side. It can also get very overwhelming, right? Because then it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm putting together the system, I've got to get all these components. It can be so there's challenges, but the idea that you've got lots of different products to learn about and to implement at customers, that's a fun aspect of it. And you're dealing with lots of vendors, so lots of learning. If you want to learn, if you love learning, that's a good route, right? Okay. If you don't like that, if you want to be more focused, then that's where the manufacturing is, right? Because you get to be more focused on one product, or maybe a few products or product lines, and it's much more targeted at what you're going into a customer for, right? Like I'm going in to sell robots at a customer, right? Very defined. Yeah. That doesn't mean I'm not learning every day, because I got to learn applications. I got to learn how to implement these, even about the robots, end effectors. There's always learning curves, but a little bit more focused. Then also when I went to the product management side, I really love that, because I love working on a team, right? So it was fun getting able to be the support person for all these salespeople. And I like that, because I love team selling. So it was fun, like going into a customer and we'd come out and be like, yeah, that was great. Yeah. And so I love that aspect of it, right? And I love working with the vendors, and that side, in my mind, to be a product manager, you've got to be in the mindset that networking and teamwork and accountability is of the utmost importance, because you've got to be interfacing with those vendors and making sure that they're happy, making sure that you're understanding what product is going on, figuring out, okay, I've got this product. How do I work with my team to get that product sold? So there's a lot more, I think, analyzing and strategy in a product management type of sales role than just, hey, you're a salesperson, go out and sell, and there's still a lot of strategy in a salesperson, right? You got to figure out your territory, figure out your customers, and figure out how to do that. But when you get into product management, there's another level of that strategy, and I love that part of it. But then when it came to robots, I was like, I got to jump to go to go and get into robots, you know. So it was a really hard decision to get out of that product management to come back into sales, but to be in the robotic world, I had to say yeah. And especially under, you know, my manager Bill, because he's just such a great guy. So yeah.
And did he come from another company at one point in time?
Yeah, so we met each other. We knew of each other at Festo.
Okay.
And so that's how we initially knew of each other, and that's kind of why he gave me a chance. And he knew my experience, and you know, fortunately, he kind of had the wherewithal, or at least he trusted in me enough to look at my experience and say, hey, this is a guy who's, you know, has a pretty comprehensive experience, but is also is comfortable with the customer, is comfortable talking about larger projects and how it can help their customer, you know, reach that higher level of productivity, which is necessary in this world. So, so he was willing to take a chance on me, and I'm glad he did.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's like a perfect example, and part of the reason why I called it out, that's the mentorship, that's the relationship, the human side of things. I mean, it's like somebody you met 10 years ago had put you into a completely different career shift.
Right.
You know,
absolutely.
And now it's essentially has altered and may alter even more, like how your career path would have totally ended out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No question about it. No question. Because it's I was on a great path anyways, and I think it still would have been a great if I would have stayed there and stayed in that product management role. And but yeah, getting into this level of automation and having this focus on robots, and especially you know, I love having an impact on the customers. You know, that I realized in the past few years how much more important that is for me. I've like, you know, the bigger impact, the more excited I am.
Yeah.
And so knowing the impact that robots can have on customers, where especially when there's a huge gap in, like, it's no one ever talks about like, oh, I'm going to implement a robot and I'm going to fire John over there. It doesn't happen.
No.
It is hey, we are missing 50, 60, 70 employees. Like, we need this many just to keep up with demand. And when you look at how much companies are growing, there is no question that we have to fill that gap with automation. And that's what's really exciting about being in this particular space is having that impact on our customers. So
yeah, absolutely. I think what you mentioned there, that with the labor gap, like we've had contracts that we've won that were, you know, we're talking about 2 years out to do the contract, and they call us back a month later, hey, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and implement this now, and it's all because of just this labor shortage. And I really don't think, I think as a human race, especially you in the United States, we have hit a point where I don't want to say there's never going to be like a reduction in like unemployment rates or anything like that, but I don't think our unemployment will ever go like past a certain percentage ever again. I think because the demand deficit is going to be so much in the we need employees direction, that because of that demand, we're never going to have enough employees, and only so many people can be born, right?
Yeah.
And then you have like China saying only 2 kids, right? So Yaskawa produces way more than 2 robots.
That's right. Well, and it's when you think about how much we're growing and how much more manufacturing we're bringing back to the States, right? So it's like the companies that are already here are growing. We already have an employee gap, right, or deficit, and then we're trying to bring more and more manufacturing back to the U.S. So it's like there's no question. I mean, we both know that the deficit in welders, right, is going to be 400,000 is either this year or next year, right? So it's already close to that, right? It's not like it goes from 0 to 400,000. We already know that there's a huge deficit, and that is such an important role in manufacturing anything, like vehicles, anything. And so so it is critical that that we get more automation implemented, and that customers have the confidence to do it. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think also too, like anybody who's like in the position of implementing automation, or just overall, if you're looking to like grow your business or impress your boss, to keep an eye out for like grant stuff, because I know there's already grant stuff out there, and I also, my prediction is that over the next 10 years, there's going to be major releases in grants for like the push of automation, robotics, and there's already some programs out there like that, where the government will pay like 50% of your application for any type of new technology to your business. And every single state has different programs like that as well. And because of this employee deficit, it's only going to get larger.
And that's an excellent point, because to add to that, I mean, it's I've got an example of a machine shop who they took full advantage of it, right? They worked with the local Purdue University, and they helped them not like with the resources to kind of implement things and to kind of talk through on, hey, which machine is going to be the best to tackle.
Yep.
And then with the grant money. And so and it's not just the grant money for the project, but then there's grant money for the training aspect of it, right? And so then it's not only, hey, let's get this implemented, but then you can get grant money to get your employees trained on robotics or whatever it is. So yeah, that's an excellent point of looking out for those resources.
Yeah, I think definitely for like yourself, for us as a company, like one of our objectives is like for us to get super educated on those things, right? Because then we can educate our customer. And now, like I said, like if the government's willing to pay 50%, it's like apply for this. And in all reality, like some of these individuals who are accepting these grants, like you may have names to them, may have names to them, like the person who's actually accepting the grant. And if we can give some type of word that says, hey, I think this would be a good match that fits really well with your grant, and there could be a little bit of push to help that grant go through, right? Because especially for maybe a company that's like not good at writing things on paper, because you do have to apply, you do have to say like what you're going to use it for, what the new technology is, and then individuals like us and yourself could like help people walk through that process of like, this is why it's valuable, this is what the new technology is, and the positive aspects of your business.
No, that's excellent. And that's great for customers just to have the idea that they need to be looking out for these other avenues to help them automate. I think about, like, we've got someone on with Yaskow, been with, I forget how long he's been there, Clint Chapman, but he heads up like our education side. And so that is his focus. He goes out and works with colleges, universities, tech schools, community colleges, local businesses to figure out, hey, how can we get more people trained in robotics and automation? It did a lot of work with eCami facility out in Eastern Kentucky. They've been doing great work with helping educate people, like train them up on machining skills and then robotic skills, and they're getting sight unseen, without even an interview, they've got job offers. As long as they get through that school, they've got a guaranteed job offer getting out of it. So there's plenty of resources to tap into to get your company or your people trained up and into automation, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And also anybody who's like looking to go to college, that's something to keep in mind, is look at the college and see like who they have partnerships with. Like Ivy Tech here, I think Vincent's University, they both have like Toyota partnerships. So like you go through their program, you can get like their apprenticeship. I mean, this 5-10 years ago, they was paying people an apprenticeship like $18 an hour. And so like those opportunities are very big. And by even searching around the different colleges that you may attend, that maybe there's a particular employer in your area that you want to go work for. It's kind of like one of your dream goals or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you might already have an in through whatever that schooling a procedure college or whatever that's in your area.
Yeah. And two examples I have, like I'm in Louisville, and so like GE has a program through Louisville, and actually specifically geared towards the automation. And then I know Yaskow has partnered with Memphis University with FedEx down there. So yeah, there's definitely plenty of opportunities to get tied in together. So
absolutely. Do you have any last valuable tips to add to the people coming into our industry?
I would I'd say just find people that are excited about whatever path you're looking at. Find someone excited to be kind of a mentor, to look under, ask the questions, and get on a path and figure out how to get in there, into the automation space. And one kind of motto or mantra that I forget the guy that said it, but he always said, like, don't waste your pain. And I've thought about that so many times. Don't waste your pain. And so
Mhm.
I try to turn it into a positive, which is like use your pain, right?
Yeah.
But the whole idea is that like whenever we struggle with something about, it's hurtful, whether it's complicated or
Mhm.
there's so many challenges these days of using it and figuring out like what's the lesson.
Yep.
Right. So I just went through something real painful and learning into this new industry or whatever.
Sure.
What's that pain and what's the lesson?
Sure.
And there's a lot to be gained from that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an ultra valuable tip because, like switching to being a business owner, any type of career shift or whatever, right? You're going to experience some pains, especially in the beginning stages. And man, it's so valuable to like analyze and think about things, and also too like any of the individuals around you, like maybe question them, like, hey, like I'm experiencing this issue, this pain, like how can I get through this, or how can so we have internal discussions because like me, I'm always concerned with like improving myself and like how to handle things better, and so like we'll have like some of our company discussions, like at least probably 5% of our company's discussions is like, okay, here's like this issue that we dealt with, like how do we like turn this into a positive, or what do we do to put in place a procedure or just a learning for ourselves personally to take that pain next time and either handle the pain better or just completely avoid it.
yeah, it's very important to analyze and learn those lessons. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, Doug, I'm
Hey,
glad to have
thank
you
you
on the
so
show.
much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome.